Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Blueforce Basic Reporting and Exporting Data webinar. All of this is part of the Mastering Blueforce Weekly Series for the week of April the 10th. Now, my name is Christian Contreras, and kind of going through, this is one of the sessions that was suggested, I guess, as part of one of the survey questions I asked a couple weeks back. So we put together a webinar for you today that's going to go through just the basic reporting that's available in Blueforce. Now I will say that the Blueforce reporting is not the best, but it does give you some basic information and gives you some utilities to export the data, and allows you to manipulate and kind of play with it over in Excel if need be. But we're going to go through the basics today on this webinar, and as always, as we always do, we have everyone currently muted. So if you have any questions or concerns, please go ahead and ask your questions in the little questions area of the control panel there on your right-hand side of your screen. And then once you enter that question there, hit send, and I'll be happy to address it at the appropriate time in our call today. Now, just as a general reminder for everyone and for you to pass on to your teams, we do offer these webinars every Tuesday and Thursday, the same topic each day, in which we actually also record the session and provide documentation online as needed. But keep in mind, this is actually a session that we look for topic ideas from you. So if there's any ideas, suggestions you'd like to see on these calls, just email me directly and suggest. But what we do is we take your suggestions and put together a webinar and kind of just to further pass on that knowledge and the tools you need to master Blueforce. Now, furthermore, let me go past this slide. Here we go. Some of the topics we're going to cover today, like I mentioned, are going to revolve around the basic reporting aspect. We're going to look at basic reports as they relate to time cards, timesheets. There's an attendance report that we'll go in there and look at briefly. We'll also go through and look at the exportable reports. And one thing you'll notice, and for those that have used Blueforce for a while, you know you can export grids. You can actually do a lot with exporting data into Excel and kind of manipulate and play with it from there. But we'll go through that. We'll also go through your Adhoc reporting, and that basically means just reporting that will, you had that that you'll be able to go in there and request a report if need be, and you can actually go through and through this Adhoc tool, just kind of go through and have the ability of using other reports that I can create for you. I can put on the menu at any point. So we'll go through that briefly. And then lastly, we'll go through just a quick one-slide overview of Hubble. All righty, so let's get started with our first slide. And that's going to be our basic reporting, and just kind of get into the navigation piece. All right, so let's go in here. Sorry about that, my computer's a little slow to respond. All righty, so basic reporting navigation. So one of the things I always ask everybody is, do any of y'all feel that you ever made this face whenever trying to find information in Blueforce? Now, Blueforce is not supposed to be difficult. It's not supposed to be hard to find information. But occasionally, there's a lot of different ways of doing the same function. I think that that makes it a little difficult. But bottom line here, the basic reporting that we're going to go through here is going to give you just a quick sample of the stuff that Blueforce can do. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is you access the reports from your home menu. When you log into Blueforce, you'll see a similar screen. You may not see quite a few icons, but at the very far right, you will see a reports icon. Now, what I tell everyone on all my webinars is that this window alone is there for the simple reason that it allows you, this screen, is there because it allows you some quick navigation through the system. And the thing you'll want to point out of this window is this middle row, which everyone on this call has access to seeing, is this middle row is kind of going to dictate the flow of Blueforce. We don't have immediate control over employees or jobs as that is done in JDE, but these are the step 1 and step 2 of the process. Now, once these two items are actually in JDE, they interface with Blueforce, and then you can now work on time cards. You can then also edit your timesheets. And then lastly, for those that are approvers, you'll be able to go into the payroll module and then actually do some functionalities in payroll, like run the payroll register report, which I'll show today, as well as kind of do the functions of approving and kind of the last check before you tell corporate payroll that you are done and ready for payroll. The last icon here is running reports. Now, some of the reports, I kind of don't like where they put the icon, but some of the reports you can run at any point. You can run them now to see who's at the job site, or you can wait till the end of the pay period to run. There's a kind of variety of reports that are available in the system. But for the most part, anything you want to do with data and reporting is going to be out of that reporting icon. Now, once you do click on that reporting icon, the system will take you to this window in which you'll be able to see your report selection menu on the left-hand side. Now, there are about 20 reports that are available for you. They all run a little differently, and we're not going to go through all 20 today on this call by no means, but I'm going to go through a couple of them. And as we go through there, you can actually go through and see the different reports. And then right now, if you can see, it's kind of small. You can go through and kind of see there's time cards, there's little things on time sheets, system usage, which I don't think any of you on this call would want to know. You may benefit from it, but you probably don't need to do that because they'll tell you, how many employees have logged in, when they've logged in. You can see kind of who's used Web Punch. You can go through and see when time clocks have synced. Stuff like a different variety of reports, but we won't go through all 20 today, like I said on this call. Now, the ones we will focus on these on the next slide. These 4 reports that I've identified are the 4 we're going to focus on in this call. And go ahead and take a time if you want to look at the different links there that are available under time cards and time sheets. So kind of going through here, you will see that time cards is obviously an important report. We're going to go through that one first. I'm going to go through the time card audits, and that kind of gives you a look at the audit perspective. You can actually run a report that will show you all the audit information, or anything, any changes, any edits, stuff like that have been done to a time record. Attendance report, that's a report that's in the system that'll benefit some of you, that'll allow you to see who actually worked. If you want to kind of run a report at the very end and kind of on a summarized view, so that's the attendance report. And then I figure we run that hours by rate type. Now, one that I left off of this report that will be beneficial, and I won't be going, off this webinar, sorry, that I won't be going through today, that some of you might find some benefit to, is a timesheet budget report. That one actually will show you your actuals versus your budgeted numbers from an ePay perspective, Blueforce perspective. So I know a lot of you have been doing that lately. We're working with the ePay team to kind of get your budgets updated into JDE as well. And all that will actually sync up and send that back down to Blueforce. So you can actually run this report for those that don't have access to the Hubble piece I'll talk about later. You can quickly run this timesheet budget report, and that'll show you that information. Or you can also see that information from the timesheet view. But we'll go through all that in a little bit down the road in our webinar. So one thing I will point out, when you run any of the reports out of Blueforce, you might get this potential error message. And I know so many of you have made this face before because I've seen it in person, but a lot of you have gotten this message where you cannot view the data more than 293 days. So typically the question I have is, I want to run a report that shows all the employee punches for the last year. Perfect. You go and try to run it, and boom, you get this message. The reason it's like that is there's so much data, a lot of punches and stuff, so we don't slow up the system. We go ahead and cap it at 93 days. So that means that if you want to run a true full report for 12 months, we ask you to go ahead and do it in small segments. Not that you can't do it, you just simply can't run it all at the same time. So you can run a 3-block segment, do another 3-block segment, another 3-block segment. Once you get those in Excel, if you need to piece them together all in one, you can copy and paste all that data into one spreadsheet if need be. But bottom line, you can access on any of the reports, you can access any data going back to the very beginning of your Blueforce usage. So if you went live, I think our first group was our San Antonio office here, or San Antonio Specialized Services office. They went live on this back kind of on a trial basis, but from September, October, November, and December of 2014, I believe it was. It's when they were actually going through and learning the system. And I think, actually 15, I'm sorry. And then the majority of you on this phone call jumped on shortly thereafter. So you've been on it for quite some time. There's a lot of data in there that you can actually go through and pull out if need be. So let's go through these reports. I'm not going to spend all that long on each report, but just want to give you a quick sense of what the report can do, and then kind of get your mind thinking. That way, if this report does the trick for you, great. If it doesn't, or if you need any additional reports or some tweaks to a report, you can always submit that via a help desk ticket, and I will be happy to assist you. But here we go. Time card report. So the question I ask everyone is, would you ever like to have a report that will show you what the work order and employee worked was for that particular time? Or do you want to see what the caller ID that the employee actually punched in from? Or even more importantly, would you like to see the actual time versus the rounded time side by side on the report? Now, that last question becomes important because on the timesheet view, you only see summarized time based on the in and out punches. On the time card view, you only see the in and out punches, but the raw punches. If there's any time that you want to see the time side by side, just to see, what the rounded time was versus the actual time the employee punched. This is a report, time card report that's very fluid. It's going to give you a lot of options, and it'll provide you a lot of detail into those daily punches. And it's available for all Blueforce users, so anyone on this phone call. And obviously, it's exportable into Excel, exportable actually also into Adobe PDF format. Now, just keep in mind, a PDF is a stagnant or stale kind of format. So once you send it out, it's gonna be it's like pictured in time. There, you can't edit it, you can't move it, you can't do anything like that. That's why I always suggest or talk about using Excel. The time card report. On the time card report here, when you go in and actually select it off the menu, and as I showed you, it's the first menu item on the list when you go to reports, the system is going to give you this screen. And I like to kind of break that up into 3 sections. The first section up here, which is job, gives you kind of all the filters. You can pick the job you want to use. Right now, it's going to show all selected jobs. And what that basically means is anything I selected to work with when I logged into Blueforce is what I'm going to be running that report for. So all selected jobs means if I pick 5 jobs, if I leave it all selected here, all 5 jobs are going to show down below here on the time card report. I do have the ability here of saying, you know what, I selected 5, but I only want to work with 1 right now. Well, then I can hit the drop down and just pick that 1 job that I want to work with. Now, more so with this, you can also pick the employee. So I can say all employees, or I want to look at the time cards information for just 1 employee for maybe the last 3 months. Well, then I would pick that 1 employee off the drop-down list and then put in my date ranges for the last 3 months. Now, notice the date range by default is only going to show you, depending on when you log in, it's only going to show you 1 day full of time, from yesterday to today, and typically is how it works. If you need a greater range, then you can actually increase the range. Just hit the drop-down, pick it from the calendar icon that comes up there, and then you can pick the right dates as needed. But keep in mind, there's a 93-day cap on that. So if you need to go greater than 93 days, then you have to run it 2 different times with 2 different date ranges. Next one is a rate type. Rate type allows you to say all rate types, meaning you want to see your regular time, your vacation time, your sick time, birthday, anniversary, bereavement, any of those different rate types that are out there. You want them all in 1 report together. Or I can break it out and say, you know what, I only want to see those that had anniversary pay this week, or all those that only had regular time this week. I can break that out. Or those that just had overtime. This is a pretty popular one to break it out. Punch type is, what do you want, kind of punches do you want to see? Do you want to see the raw punches, or do you want to see other type of punches? Raw punches is the normal. That's typically what the employee actually punched in and out of. And then lastly over here, you're going to click on submit. When you click on submit, you'll be able to go ahead and submit the report, and the system down below will run, where I'm doing all my zigzags and scribbles. The report will run and provide you an updated report. Now, that little first section that I have in red box around is required and kind of a standard to run this report. Now, in my second section, the label number 2, it says show. And in here, you have a whole bunch of different checkboxes. Now, if you look down below, we only have the job ID, job name, the date, the employee ID, name, employee name, and the rate type. When you look at it, you'll say, it's a good report, but I kind of need to see the hours that were actually in there, or more importantly, I need to know what work orders were involved in. What's going on here? It's not showing that. This is where it becomes fluid, because you have the ability now of saying, you know what, I want to see the work order on there. I actually want to see the task, which is the very first one. I've got these 2 going. I actually want to see the actual hours the employee worked. That's about it. So when I do that, the system will then, I go back up here and click on submit again. The system will create me 3 more columns with that information. Keep in mind, you do have the ability of seeing caller IDs. So if you want to see those locations that use the Fonen system. When you check that caller ID option, you'll be able to go in here and see what phone numbers they called in regards to that particular time. Another one that's pretty good is the lunch amount. If any of you on this phone call, which is probably a small snippet of the entire population, if any of you are having your employees punch in and out on the time clocks for lunch, the system will actually go in here and show you those lunch punches. Keep in mind, this is a time card report. So typically when we do lunch rules, they come in on the time sheet. And the time sheet side, apparently with the way that works is that's only going to show the timesheet information kind of in the after fact. So the time card won't show that on here specifically. So just keep that in mind, but that is an option. If you ever see the shift that we have assigned for that employee, that's an option there as well. And then assets, I always put on there. The shift is right here, I'm sorry. On assets, I put in here because if you want to see what clock and the clock ID they actually use from the Walters perspective, you could actually see the clock information listed here as well on the employee record. So that's a time card report. I think it's one that's the most fluid and probably the most useful for everybody, but it's a quick report you can run at any point. And then once you've gone through the steps 1 and 2, you have the option of adjusting your sorting. By default, it's sorting by employee, but you can sort by job. You can sort by the date. You can sort by the employee, however you want to do that. And then lastly, you have an option to export the data. So if you want to export that data into, like I said, Excel, which is the common one and preferred one, or you can do it to a PDF format as well. That is a time card report, and the first one that's kind of the basis for everything going forward. Next one is the time card audits. Now, the way that time card audits work here is that kind of like the audit system does on your time card view, you have the ability of going through there and seeing, when some changes were made, who made them, why them, kind of the reason code they assigned to them, stuff of that nature. So you have that all set up as part of the audit report. Now, I will say that the question I ask everyone when I talk about the audit report is, are you concerned that your ePay compliance time change score is too low? Are you worried that your supervisors are changing employee time? If either of those are valid questions to ask, then this report is the one that's going to be the best for you to use. Now, this report is going to provide you a good view of all the detail of any and all changes that have been made to the employee's time card. So what this audit report will show you, it will show you the detail of when the employee actually created their punch, and then any subsequent changes that were made. Maybe you would change the task, or maybe you changed the in punch, or maybe you changed the rate type or the job or something like that. All that is reflected on the time card audit. Now, from an audit perspective, from a compliance perspective, we're focused on the time changes. We want to make sure that our employees are not getting their time changed. That's what we're focused on for the compliance scoring. Also, from the correction lag side point of the compliance, we look at when those changes were made. Now, you don't ever get your hand slapped for making a change. We want to make sure that the job, the task, all that stuff is correct, but we want to do that in a timely manner. We don't want to wait 2 weeks at the end of the pay period to do all our changes either. So that's kind of what that correction lag score is for that. But in any case, the time cards audit report will provide that information. It's going to reflect the change, the date and time of change, and actually who made the change. So it kind of gives you all that detail. And once again, this report is available to all users, all Blueforce users, and is exportable as well. So kind of when you go through this report, and I'll just kind of briefly go through it, looks very similar to the time card report at the top of the screen. We have some filters. You can choose the job. You can filter on certain employees, a certain date range, and you can actually tell the system, I only want to look at phone-in punches, or only want to look at Walter punches, or only want to look at mobile punches. So you've got that source option there to look at, or you can say all punches by default. And then you have the option to search, and then you have the option to export to Excel. Now, export is a little different here. It's up there in the very first line. Typically, you fill in your filters, hit search. The system will then create that report down below here at the bottom where I just scribbled. Now, kind of going through that, you'll see that you will see notations on the left-hand side where little arrows are circled now in red. Along the left-hand side there, those little arrows are letting you know that there's some type of audit activity. Now, keep in mind, if you look here at the color scheme, this color scheme corresponds to the audits. because you notice that for those that are Fonen users and want to use a phone system, these that are in green are perfectly fine. These are in green are looking good. These that are in just plain white background are perfectly good. The green ones are from our Fonen system. The white ones are from the Walters. So you notice over to the left-hand side, there is nothing over here on the very far left, noting that there's any audit activity. No black arrows. That means that it's pretty good. Anytime that a Blueforce user has gone in there and created a punch manually, or gone in there and edited a punch that an employee had successfully punched in and out with, you're going to see little notations. Now, you can expand those if you'd like to. When you run the report, they'll be included, but you can always expand them and get the further detail from this report on this view. That we don't have to export it out or don't have to print off this report or anything. You can just look at it on the screen. But by clicking on that, it'll give you the detail. It'll show you, it'll actually kind of sneak in. If I click on this first arrow right here, the system will actually squeeze in a couple of lines that will show me all the detail here. So I have kind of a couple of lines showing me that, you know, this employee probably was manually created 2 lines. It'll show me the in punch, who created the out punch, and all that information, how to create that line. Now, the ones that are orange are telling you that those are change times. Now, keep in mind, remember, kind of from our basic reviews of Blueforce a while back, you know, the yellows are telling you those are manually created punches, meaning the system, the employee didn't create them on their own. The orange ones are telling you that some type of change or approval was made. So like in this one, someone changed the overtime, someone probably changed these punches, something occurred here as well. So that's what's telling you something's been altered. But typically when it's a green background, white backgrounds like that, those are perfectly fine. Those are good punches straight from the system. No audits were done on those. So this is a good report to go back and if you're, like I said, if you're concerned that your compliance scores are low for time change, run this report and then quickly see all the changes that were actually made to the record. The next report I want to go through is the attendance report. Now, the attendance report is one that's really not all that popular, but I'm going to bring it up today because it's going to actually assist a lot of you with your day-to-day routine. Now, the attendance report question that I always ask is, you know, do you want to make sure that your employees are working the schedule they actually were assigned to work? So you assign someone to come in at 5 and leave at 10. Are they actually doing that? You know, are they coming in at noon and leaving at 6? You know, you have the ability of seeing this from an attendance report. Now, if a supervisor, obviously, you probably will be on site, you'd see that, but there's a lot of sites around the country that are simply unmanned for the most part. There's no supervision there, I'm sorry. So employees come and go as they please, and they punch in and punch out, and we just look at their time, looks good, and move on. But attendance report will kind of give you that for the detail as well. But gives you a daily view and status of each employee. But the key thing here, it gives you the detail as to the shift that was worked and whether or not the employees were scheduled to work, didn't take lunch, called off, took PTO, etc. This is a report that I would recommend that if you are using the scheduling module, and I've mentioned the scheduling module a little bit on the last couple of webinars. We are going to have a webinar in the next couple of weeks to cover just the scheduling module and kind of show everyone what it can do. And if anyone is interested in starting that up, you're more than welcome to. But there is no pressure to take on the scheduling module. Just notice that's a good, helpful tool to use. But it works best because a lot of the scheduling module, you actually will schedule somebody and you have kind of a hard schedule in the system. And if they deviate from that in any way, shape, form, this report is going to catch it in a heartbeat. Now, everyone else can still use it because it's still available to all Blueforce users, and it's also exportable as well. But it works the best when you actually use it in conjunction with the scheduling module. Now, I apologize, the left-hand side is a little cut off here for you guys on your screen, and maybe not, maybe just a tad, but bottom line, the attendance report, the way it works is you have that little first set criteria at the very top of the screen. You also have the options where you can actually show certain types of items, and then you have the sorting functions and the export capabilities, just like the Timecard report. Now, down below in the heart of the data is you have the status, and the status is actually going to tell you, you know, is the person a no-show? Were they just simply unscheduled? These that were unscheduled weren't on this in the scheduling module whatsoever, so we didn't know, we weren't expecting them to work that day, and typically, as most employees that aren't using the scheduling module, and that's perfectly fine. But it just marked them as unscheduled. So it lets you know that they punched in at, this case, 6 o'clock, punched out at 10 o'clock for 4 hours, gives you a kind of a checklist here so you can go down a list and check. But it's letting you know on the left-hand side that, just alert, FYI, he didn't have a schedule in the scheduling module, and therefore he's unscheduled. Now, a lot of users that have chosen to use this report have exported it out into Excel and just dropped off that status column because it gives you good data and good information. So this one is just simply the daily attendance report is just available for you to kind of give you a daily overview and review of what the actual employee did on a certain day. But it's going to give you the statuses there in the red column as scheduled, unscheduled, no-show. So like for this particular examples, these employees were supposed to work. They were on the schedule to work. And actually, let me do this. Let me go and erase my drawings here. There we go. These employees here were scheduled to work, but never punched in and out. But the system recognized that there's no in or out here, no information, no hours. So the system automatically noted that on the reports. You could go back and kind of verify. This also helps you from a disciplinary standpoint. So you can also make sure that the employees who were supposed to work did notify that they were going to be off or requested vacation, and maybe this is a little accident that the employees were left back on the schedule. But in any case, this is just a report called Daily Attendance. It kind of gives you an overview of the employees that should have been there. Now, if you wanted to, from a big perspective, see if everyone's taking lunches, you have the options to say, show lunches or just show lunch punches only. You also have the option to see the tasks, and all this is right up here at the top of the screen. So that's some options you have available, but this is also a good check because I know like in the state of California, they require that everyone take an X amount of time for lunch, and if they don't, then we have to pay them, and it gets a little hairy down the road if we don't do it correctly. So I'm using California as an example. I know other states have similar requirements, but once again, you can run a report and see, these are all my employees that took the lunches as they should have. So those are some good questions, a couple of questions that I try to incorporate there. I hope I answer them for everybody. The next report, and kind of the last basic report I'm going to cover on this webinar before I go on to other pieces of the reporting aspects. This report is called Hours by Rate Type. And this is kind of similar functionality to the Timecard reports. But I like this one because from time to time I get questions of, I want a report that just shows all the employees that work vacation and how many hours they work and all I care about. I want to make sure that everyone got paid correctly. And I point them to this report because now you have a report that allows you just to do that. So to that, this report is going to provide you a look at hours worked by a specific rate type. It's available to everybody as well and is exportable. And this report, it's very similar to the Timecard report, but it actually adds in pay rate. And we put that in there because typically on certain tasks in combination with a certain rate type, your pay rate may actually increase, or the employee's pay rate may actually increase. So for example, these are all holiday rate types. You might get paid time and a half for a rate type, or double time, or triple time, just depending on the scenario. In that case, we wanted to provide that rate type there so you could actually validate that everything was being paid correctly. Now, to this note, most of you on this phone call may not have access to pay rates, and that's perfectly fine. You can still run this report. The key thing to keep in mind is if you do have access to pay rates, you'll be able to see the pay rate column. If you do not have access to the pay rates, then you do not see this column. Simple as that. Now, the hours by rate type has a filter at the very top of the screen, which allows you to pick the specific rate type you want to run it for. If you say all rate types, then the system will dump the data just like you see here down below. There are no additional columns to add to this. It's just simply what you see is what you get. The only thing you can adjust is the filters on what rate type, how you want to sort, and how do you want to sort by. So bottom line, that is the hours by rate type report. This is the one I would recommend that everyone run whenever you want to ask yourself or check off. For example, maybe this weekend, maybe Good Friday is a holiday, or maybe more so Easter Sunday is a holiday for everybody that some of us are eligible to get paid for. Well, in those cases, we can go in the system and actually keep track to make sure that vacation was paid right or that holiday work was paid right. Just go up there, go to this report, run the rate type or select the rate type of holiday work, whatever rate type you're looking for, hit submit, and the system will return all of the scenarios where someone was paid that particular rate type based on a certain job that was selected. So I urge you, go ahead and try to do that. It's a good report to run. Alrighty, so that was like the 4 basic reports I thought would be most beneficial and kind of get your feet wet with running reports and kind of getting used to Blueforce. If you have any reports that you want you're more than welcome to request that information, request that the report you need to the IT help desk, and our ePay team will go out there, look at our queue, pull that in, and create a report for you. But we offer that as an option always. All right, so exporting data. One of the things you may have noticed is you can export data from a variety of different ways in the system, a variety of different places, but we're doing it all the same way into Excel from different parts of the Blueforce system. The way I will point out for you first is the Timecard view. Now, when you go to the Timecard view has this little export to Excel capability. It's going to allow you to take the current Timecard data that's currently displayed based on your search criteria and then export that into Excel. So a lot of you are doing a great, fantastic job of going through and reviewing your time on a daily basis. If I were to go through here and review my time on a daily basis, obviously I'm going to pick my filters. I'm going to hit search. The screen down here is going to show me all my data that corresponds to that. The beauty of this particular function of exporting it into Excel is the system is going to keep all of this color, and you'll be able to correspond the legend, the Timecard legend that's right above the grid here. You can actually correspond that to the actual data that's taken over to Excel. So you always have the ability of going through there and exporting your Timecard data and sharing it, saving off, whatever you need to do. But ultimately, once you go in and share that information and maybe note corrections in Excel, you have to come back here, obviously, in Blueforce to make sure that the employee's information is up to date and correct. But bottom line, export to Excel is available from the Timecard view. Now, from the timesheet view, it's not quite the same. Now, keep in mind, a Timecard is your raw punches, keeps your day-to-day punches, the stuff that's important that we get correct the first time around. The other side of the coin is the timesheet view. Timesheet view is going to show you summarized time, going to show you all the time with the rounded rules on it. It's going to show you hours that have been accumulated, so 4.5 hours or 6.9 hours, 6.75 hours, however many hours the employee is due. The timesheet view is though different in that how you export. When you go to the when you go into the timesheet view, the top right-hand corner, you're going to have 2 options: export summary and export details. Now, export summary is just that. It's going to give you a summary view of your time. What that basically means is just going to basically the export summary is going to be this view down below. The initial view when you go into your timesheet. The export summary is going to basically export the status, your reporting period, date, pay group name, the pay period, the hours you have listed here, etc. It's exactly like you see it on the screen. That is a summary view. More times than not, when someone asks me about exporting stuff out of the timesheet, I direct them to the other view, the export details view. The reason we do export details here is the export detail is going to provide you all the detail behind these hours. So I show 8 total hours for this first line. Well, that's going to show me, if I go in there, it's going to allow me to now see the person who worked the job, the employee who worked it, what rate type, what task, what work order, the number of hours worked, broken out, etc. Once again, summary is this view I show on the screen. Detail is going to give you the detail, just like if I went into the actual timesheet. But you don't have to go into the actual timesheet to do that. You do that right from the first screen of the timesheet view right here as shown on the screen. Now, just keep in mind, when you go into the export summary, it's just a quick way of doing a quick report, because obviously the timesheet provides you a lot of data. It provides you kind of all this stuff, shows your status, shows your open punches, shows you your jobs broken out by task, and occasionally you want to share that with your team. So export details will do that for you and allow you to save it off your computer, email it, whatever you got to do straight from Excel. All right, so I'm going to turn my focus back to a report in the system real quick, and I purposely waited to do this because this is only going to affect the approvers on this phone call. So Submitters, editors, hang tight just for 5 minutes while I go through the payroll register for all the approvers. Now, the approvers on this phone call, I call it required reporting because part of the approval process, you should be, and if you're not doing it now, please start doing it. You should be able to run the you'll have to run the payroll register. And the payroll register is important because it's going to give you all the information you need to know before you tell corporate payroll to run with your payroll, in other words, and start processing it and funding your pay cards, paychecks, direct deposits, etc. So real quick, a few highlights of this report. And as I mentioned, you should always run this report prior to approving. It's a key step because it's vital in that it's actually going to tell you what the status is of every employee. Are they ready for payroll? Are they not ready for payroll? There's going to be potential issues out there. It's going to identify all this information for you. It's going to save you a lot of grief later if you just run this report. This is run straight out of the payroll module, and I'll show you that here momentarily. Now, it's going to provide you the hours and dollars to be paid, so basically gross pay. Keep in mind that we don't do any deductions or anything part of Blueforce. That's why time goes back over to JD Edwards once we give it the okay and approval from Blueforce. Once it's back over in JD Edwards, then at that point it's processed to take out any deductions, garnishments, any benefits, stuff of that nature as needed. It also gives you 2 columns. Lets you know if that employee is exportable, meaning that time is going to go over. A good example of that is salaried employees are not exportable by default. Regular employees are. And it also lets you know if they're active or not. If they are inactive and they show up on this report, just keep in mind that employee, when it goes over to Blueforce, is going to error out. It goes over to JD Edwards, it's going to error out because that employee is no longer active. That is why when we actually go through the payroll process, we make sure that everybody who was worked is still in an active state and has not been terminated until their payroll has actually processed. Otherwise, you'll risk the chance of person not getting paid their last check, or kind of like getting lost in the transition there. But it'll error out on the JD Edwards side, and you'll have probably a little call from our corporate payroll team letting you know that we got a problem to correct. And then lastly, the report is exportable as well, but it's only available, once again, to the approvers. The way you go is when you go to the payroll module, on the left-hand column, you're going to have an option to see the payroll register report, in which when you select that payroll register report link, it's going to give you this screen. This screen allows you now to put in the date range of your payroll. So here you would put in whatever your pay period is, and then you're going to select the pay groups that match that particular pay period. Now, the ones that are going to show up are the ones that are within your realm of access. So you pick the pay groups you want to run with. So if you want to do all of them together, you can, but I will probably run a pay group at a time. It'll kind of keep everything separate and kind of nice and neat. And then you click on Generate Report down at the bottom. Now, when you click on Generate Report, the system is actually going to now create this report for you, and it's going to give you the breakout. Now, if you choose to run all your pay groups together, that's probably not a problem. Just know that all your pay groups will be listed here side by side. And there's no sort to control that in Blueforce, but you can always export this report and then sort it in Excel if need be. But you'll see your pay group, more importantly first, your pay period, the pay group. There are no batch IDs currently. If you do this before you approve, and I'll explain that momentarily. Payroll ID, payroll ID and employee number are the same. The name of the employee, the default job of the employee, the total hours worked for that employee, and the total pay for that employee. Once again, it's gross pay. Now, the 3 fields that make a difference here, and everyone should pay attention who are approvers, are the last 3 down here. Status, if you see anyone there that says not ready is not good. What that basically says is that person has time that's not been submitted. That person is having an issue with their timesheet, time card somewhere. Something's going to occur that if I say go ahead and approve and go ahead and process payroll, core payroll is going to process it, and that employee is not going to come over to in the feed. So we need to make sure that it says ready for payroll. Remember, if you miss anybody that's not ready and they stay behind and don't get processed by corporate payroll in the initial batch, that time might be subject to having to be done separately as a manual timesheet, because now it might be an interim situation. So keep that in mind. Export employee, if it says yes there, you're good. If it says no, that means that time does not go over. And the reason we have that there is because we have salaried employees that actually get time coded to their jobs, actually punch in and punch out, but at the end of the day, they still get a salary. So we typically do that maybe to co-labor or to, you know, kind of house different scenarios that might be available from a salary standpoint. But once again, we don't send that time to JDE Edwards because JDE Edwards has it already programmed and set that this employee gets a set amount of pay every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it may be on the salary calendar. The last one is active. If it says yes, you're good to go. If it says no, then you know that employee's time, if there's any involved with that employee, is not going to be coming over to JDE Edwards either. So make sure that active is yes, export is yes, and your status is ready for payroll. Now, if you go in and run this payroll register report after payroll is processed, what you're going to notice here is your status is going to change. It's going to say exported, and you're also going to have a batch ID listed here. The batch ID is just I guess you can say a confirmation that the time actually showed up or that did go over into JDE Edwards. Now, you won't need any confirmation if the employee got paid, but if you want to run this report just for your own benefit and confirmation, you can go through and run this. So after these basic reports that I've showed you, you're still sitting around and thinking, you know what, this is not going to do it, not going to cut it, still need some more. That's why I introduced ad hoc reporting. Ad hoc reporting is kind of what they refer to as on-the-fly reporting. I can go in there and create a report for you depending on what your criteria is and put it on the menu for you to run it in a special section called ad hoc reporting. Now, only those that have a need for reporting ad hoc reporting would run it. So not everyone would go in there and see these reports, just if you need access to that particular report. So basically, still can't find that information you seek and you want to pull your hair out like that young lady is doing the string, then the two methods, as I always say in all my calls, is contact the IT help desk. Go to the help desk ticket or call the IT help desk and they'll put a help desk ticket in for you and then we can proceed. But the bottom line of this slide is provide a specific detail as to your expectations of this report. If you just tell me I need a report for my employees, that doesn't tell us much. I can go any way, shape, form, and instead of wasting your time and obviously wasting my time, give me the details. Tell me, you know, what do you expect? What fields do you need? What order do you want them in? Are you going to be filtering anything? Anything along that line that can get us to get a quick resolution to your request is beneficial. And it doesn't hurt for you to draw up a report. If you need to, just mock it up and email it or attach it to, or more so attach it to the help desk ticket, and we can kind of have an idea of which way to drive that particular report. Then lastly, I just want to introduce you to Hubble. Now, many of you on this phone call who are district managers on up, and a few of you that are office admins, you do have access to Hubble reporting already. You may or may not know that, but you do have access to Hubble reporting. Now, what Hubble is a tool that we use, that we've probably been using for the last 9 to 10 months here at ISS. And over that time, we've been trying to create dashboards and different views that an employee can log in, that one of our Blueforce users here can log in there and see data. More specifically, a lot of you have seen the ePay compliance reporting. That is a Hubble report. Some of you have worked with a monthly labor forecast. That is also a Hubble report. But you have this at your disposal. Now, Hubble is a new performance management suite that utilizes JDE and ePay to offer us additional tools and reporting. Now, examples, like I said, are those at compliance dashboard and the monthly labor forecast. There are some other reports like a budgeting report and a couple on the finance team use as well. Quite a variety of reporting and analytics that we put together for you. Now, this is going to be available to all general managers, district managers, operations team members, and office admins as needed and as requested. Now, if you don't have access or you don't think you have access and you think this is something cool that I would like to use, please use the link here. It's going to be found from your gateway site. If you go to the main gateway site, there is a little tab on there called DocuWare. When you go there, there is a form that's called Hubble Access. If you fill that out, submit that form. Our Hubble team here, many of you may know Doug Rudy. Doug Rudy is head of our Hubble team. He goes in there, will set up your user access, and we'll get that back to you and allow you to access the Hubble dashboards as needed. Now, I will be offering some webinars here in the very near future that are going to be focusing on that monthly compliance, ePay compliance dashboard, as well as that monthly labor forecast, for you to kind of just be in the knack of knowing how those reports run, and kind of keep a close look at, especially at the employee, so the ePay compliance dashboard piece and how you're doing as far as compliance goes. So that's really just a quick intro I want to give you as to Hubble. And it's hard to kind of explain it more than just what I did here without actually taking you through and showing you that piece. So when those Hubble webinars come out and the schedule is set, I'll ask that go ahead and at that point sign up for a session and get more information on those pieces. But in the meantime, go and grant yourself some access by going out to that ISS Gateway site and filling out that form and getting it submitted online. Well, that pretty much does it for this call today. I want to say thank you for joining us. Next week, we'll be focusing on exploring the job record, in which I'm going to go through the job record setup, kind of show you how that is all set up and where that information comes in, because occasionally we get questions about the job being wrong, or how can I change this on the job record and stuff like that. So I'm going to go through that piece. Then we're going to go through the setup of the job record and the configuration, how that affects the Walter devices, how does that affect the Fonen, etc., and then how you can get some more information about those devices via the job record in Blueforce. So join us next Tuesday and Thursday, or Thursday at 2 p.m. Central, as we continue our Mastering the Weekly series webinar with Exploring the Job Record. Until next week, have a good rest of the weekend, and have a happy Easter weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thank you again.